The incredible Matthew Arkin is here. Matthew, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Hey, Jim, it's great to be here. If I had known, I would have gotten a martini and some lobster and, put myself together. Would have gotten ready for it.
That's it, right? So how are you, and how are you getting through all the craziness and some of the things you've been doing in the last couple of months to keep those creative juices flowing, Matthew?
Well, a couple of things. You were talking about what you've done with your hair, and if you've seen all my, headshots and everything, this is a very different look for me because I was going a little COVID crazy with the hair, and I finally got myself some clippers and did the full Travis McGee, not Travis Bickle, but Travis McGee,
right?
The John D. McDonald character who cuts his own hair, and I just did it all. But
that's it. Think about the money you saved.
But you've started this show. I cannot do what you do as well as you do.
You come from a wonderful family of entertainers, and your father, being Alan Arkin, a brilliant veteran actor, seasoned actor as well. Tell us about those early influences growing up. Were you always a kid that was performing? Were you always sort of strutting your stuff when you were a youth, and dad and others noticed that? How did this all develop for Matthew?
Well, it was a circuitous route. I do remember, one of my earliest memories is being backstage at a Broadway theater when my father was doing a Murray Schiskell play called Love with Eli Wallach and Ann Jackson, amazing theater couple, and Eli Jackson, an amazing film actor, also in The Misfits, in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. When I made my Broadway debut, it was in a Neil Simon play called Laughter on the 23rd Floor, and the character I played was basically the young Neil Simon in the play, who opens the show with a monologue talking to the audience as one of the writers on the Sid Caesar show. And curtain goes up, and I'm sitting at the desk writing, and I turn to the audience and say, I guess this is what I've dreamed of my whole life. And it was this feeling of full circle that those were the very first words I got to speak on a Broadway stage in front of an audience.
And what was that feeling like for you, Matthew, when that happened?
It was, well, I was an understudy in that show. So going on only once was sort of like being strapped to the front of a bullet train.
Yeah.
But it was an amazing, emotional experience. And then, of course, Nathan Lane starred in that show. And at the end of the evening, after everybody comes out for their individual bows, and there's the company bow, and that's the end of it. But the company took their company bow, and I'm ready to walk off stage with the company, and Nathan stops and holds up his hands and quiets the audience and made an announcement that it had been my Broadway debut, and led the audience in a round of applause for me, for getting there. And I burst into tears. It was a very emotional experience to get there. But the first actual acting job that I had was when I was 8 years old, and my older brother Adam was 11. My father was already starring in movies, but he was starting to feel like many actors do, hey, I think I want to try my hand at directing.
Right.
And so he decided to direct, he had directed a short film already, and he decided to direct another short film to sort of start learning before doing a feature. And he took a short story that he had written when he was in high school about his younger brother and sister, and he rewrote it to be about two boys, strangely enough, named Adam and Matthew. And he rewrote it as a short film and shot it with me and Adam in 3 days. And 8 years old, that was my first professional job, got my SAG card. And then the film was nominated for Best Short at the Academy Awards in 1969, I believe.
At 8 years old?
We were nominated.
At 8?
Yeah, well, the movie, not
yeah, right.
The movie was just me and Adam. So we couldn't have been that bad.
Right. So you knew then, you had an idea like, I really like this. I'm enjoying this. This is in my DNA. I need some more of this. I want to, get out there and make people feel good and tell stories, be a storyteller, make them smile and sort of lighten the load for them. You knew early on that you wanted to do this, huh?
Yeah. And then interestingly, so I started working a little bit in film and television. My first major guest star role on television was on an episode of Kojak in 1975. And again, the way things strangely go full circle, Eli Wallach, who was in that play Love that I was at 5 years old watching from the wings, I played Eli Wallach's son on this episode of Kojak. And how amazing to have that opportunity to be, yep, you've got that picture. There I am at 15 and Eli. And it was extraordinary to get to do something like that with somebody who had been a little bit like an uncle to me growing up. Really sort of, and on set, he certainly, took me under his wing. And it was really lovely.
When you think about that, here you are working at that age with Eli Wallach. I mean, and then, even Telly Savalas is there. And,
I didn't know then, I didn't know, now I have a friend who's a huge Arthur Miller fan. And he has a beautiful framed print of that famous photograph from the Misfits with Clark Gable and Arthur Miller it's Clark Gable, Arthur Miller, Marilyn Monroe, and Eli, and now I look at it and I get emotional all over again, But at 15, I was a smart ass kid. I didn't know. Michael Gazzo was also in this episode of Kojak. F. Murray Abraham plays a thug in this, just a small role as a leg breaker for a bag man. And I was this smart ass kid. I had no idea the people I was having the opportunity to work with.
So with your father, when you had these opportunities and you were scoring, you were doing well, and people were loving your work at these early ages, what was your dad saying, being this veteran actor all these years? I'm sure very proud and encouraging you along the way, right?
He was encouraging. He did. I did, however, take a left turn after college. I took a left turn. I was the only one in the family who had a real. I'm certainly by no means the smartest member of my family. I am the only member of my family who had a real interest in, I guess, for lack of a better word, institutional academic life. So after college, I ended up going to law school and practiced law for 5 years until I realized that I hated it, and I quit to come back to acting. And I think that was a little tough for my dad to watch me throw that away. But several years later, there was one particular play that I did that we went out to dinner afterwards after he came to see it. And he told me that he thought I had made the right decision and was doing the right thing. So that was very meaningful to me, that he came around and felt like I'd made that, even though I took this circuitous route, that he felt like I made the right choice ultimately.
So how did taking that route help you in life, having that other knowledge that you've gained by not just sticking with the acting, but informing and educating yourself in another area of life?
Well, after you've been screamed at by a few judges and threatened with a contempt charge, there's nothing that an audience can really do to you.
That's about right.
Yeah, it made walking out on stage a much less nerve-wracking experience, because I realized, if I do a bad job tonight, nobody's actually going to go to jail or lose their house.
which is a good thing.
Yeah. So it helped me put things in perspective. It also it was still a career in which you had to do a lot of speaking in front of other people and think on your feet very fast.
Yes.
So in some ways it didn't feel like as much of a departure as you might think. But then after I quit law, and you know, my dad said to me, well, you know, if you're going to do this, you have to really, you can't just go do it. You've got to study. And if you're going to study, you should study with the best.
Right.
And I said, who's that? And he said, Uta Hagen. So I went and auditioned for her class, and I got in, and she kicked my butt for many years.
What was that experience like? I mean, that's quite an honor, huh?
It was an honor, and it was extraordinary. I mean, she was so incredibly insightful. She was very no nonsense.
Right.
There was nothing touchy-feely or mystical about her approach. She eschewed being treated like some, you know, font of wisdom. She didn't want acolytes. I always think of her acting technique as, I call it the auto mechanics of acting. You know, so many acting teachers get into, you know, oh, there's all this. She was like, no, here's the problem. Here's how you do. Here's what you do.
Cut to the chase. That's it.
This is the obstacle, and this is how you surmount it. She's just really, she was no nonsense.
How would you describe her method of teaching? What, for people that haven't experienced that?
She breaks down what we have to do on stage into very particular problems that need solving. And she has a series of 10 or 12 exercises that are very simple and very direct, that you do alone, and they give you the tool bag that you need for when you go on stage. The other thing that I love that she did was that whenever you presented one of her exercises or a scene with a scene partner, and this is something I do with my students, and it makes them crazy, is the very first thing she would say when it was over was, she would say, what can you tell me? Because you ultimately need to know how to do what you're doing without somebody telling you. As an actor, you're going to work with bad directors on stage, in film and television, and you've got to be able to have a critical eye and know how to work your craft without somebody holding your hand.
Right.
And it's so funny, and I tell my students this when they start studying with me. I say, after you do your scene, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you what you can tell me. And what I'm asking you for is to tell me, you know, what you were trying to accomplish and what you felt you were able to accomplish, how close you came to hitting your target and your goal.
Right.
I want you to develop your own internal critical eye. And invariably, they finish their scene, and I say, what can you tell me? And they say, well, the play's about, and I'm always like, I know what the play is. I don't need you to tell me what the scene's about. I know what the scene is about. I just watched the scene. What were you trying to do? Because there are a number of things you might be working on any particular iteration of that scene in a class. You know, you may be saying, this time, today, I really want to contact the internal, difficult, emotional place in this moment in the scene. Well, if that's what you were working on, what did you do to try and do that? And how did it work for you? And if it didn't work, what are we going to try next? Yeah, so I certainly would not put myself up next to her as a teacher, but she's certainly what I aspire towards.
Absolutely. And with the breadth of experience that you've had, I mean, which is extraordinary. Let's take it from the Kojak appearance with Eli Wallach. What, you know, and then of course you mentioned studying law, so that gives you a different perspective. And somebody's posted that litigators make great actors as well. I guess there's sort of a parallel there they made.
Some of the good litigators.
That's right. So what was it that brought you back into performance and acting when you were in the field of law?
I think part of the problem was that I was, from the time I was 11 years old when I read To Kill a Mockingbird, I was in the thrall of that novel and that character. I ended up writing my thesis on it in college, and I thought that, and of course Gregory Peck in the movie, one of the great characters in the history of American cinema, I think, and one of the great movies in American cinema. The craftsmanship in making that film is extraordinary. And I think that early imprint made me think that Atticus Finch was the kind of guy he is because he's a lawyer. No, he's the kind of guy he is because he's the kind of guy he is.
That's right.
And my life was not as a lawyer was not turning out that way. And also, as an attorney, even when you do a great job for people, they are generally not happy with you. Mm-hmm. Which makes a certain amount of sense. Like, for instance, if somebody ripped you off for $100,000 and we sue them, and you're 100% in the right, we're going to go to court, and the judge is going to make us settle. They're going to try and make us settle.
That's the key.
And
right?
if the other side offers you 80 grand, that's an amazing settlement, because you could lose at trial. The judge is going to say, you're crazy. Take the 80 grand. So you're going to take the 80 grand. I'm going to probably end up taking 20 of that by that point. So you lost $40,000. You're not going to be happy with anybody. Not happy. You know, you won and you got 60 cents on the dollar, right? That's if I do a really good job for you. So I just felt like I was making people miserable all the time. And also, I think, you know, growing up with my dad on film sets all over the world and watching things like, you know, my brothers and I were gone for 8 months out of school when they were making Catch-22. And to sit there and watch those B-25 planes and buildings blowing up and Paul Apprentice on the raft, you know, it was like growing up with the circus.
Right.
Go to an office every day. It was not in my blood. It was not
opposite worlds.
Yeah.
Right.
And I got to tell you, I have not looked back. I'm grateful for the discipline and the knowledge that I gained in those years, but I have not once regretted the choice that I made, even though I probably could have made an awful lot more money as an attorney than I've made as an actor. I'd rather live in a garret doing what I'm doing than live in a mansion doing something I don't like.
That you hated, and you couldn't sleep at night. But what's great about having all these different...
Well, I still can't sleep at night.
Say that anyway.
Who can sleep at night these days?
Especially the last couple of months, I know. Or even know the day of the week. I'm always having like today's Tuesday, and I'm thinking already it's Thursday, and I'm supposed to wrap things up by Friday, and it's like, wait a minute, it's only Tuesday. What? And it's the end of July almost here. It doesn't even know what month it is. I think it's really great, the experiences and those pivot points that you had in your life, Matthew, because when you do teach others and you do inspire others who want to sort of go into the entertainment field and they want to become actors and other areas of expertise in these fields that you and I are in, you can really guide them in ways like, hey, let me tell you, I tried that, or I did that, or I wouldn't necessarily go that route, or if you do that, here's what can happen. you've had this breadth of experience at so many different levels, from, you know, obviously coming from a family of entertainers. That's part one. Getting educated yourself by watching your dad, and you're having your brothers as well, but also some of these other routes that you took in your own personal life that just add perspective and wisdom that can be of great help to those that you're teaching, right?
I hope so. I also, I tell my students, I think you need to get out there and live a life. Um, I don't think you have to be conservatory trained to be a good actor. The more you're able to bring your own experience, the richness of that experience to your work, the better an actor you're going to be. I worry a little bit sometimes about the generation coming up that is so careful and sheltered, because and so much of their interaction is through this.
Mm-hmm.
Because I have acting students who I realize their range of emotional expression is, I am really angry at you.
Yeah.
I am breaking up with you. And they don't have the face-to-face raw emotion that those of, now some people, you might say, we live in a safer world, but we also live in a world of the range of experience that some of the younger actors are bringing to their work is somewhat limited, and I think a lot is because of this and the computer. Now, I am a tech head. I love computers. I'm not a Luddite. I don't say, oh, computer bad, but get out there and go on dates, get your heart broken, have face-to-face arguments with people, tell people face-to-face I love you, tell people face-to-face I never want to see you again, because you've got to bring that to your life and your work.
I love this. Life is not an emoji centric.
That, Marianne, that is a great comment. That is true.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I say mom, they don't know if I'm referring to Barbara, who I call mom because she raised me, or my real mother, who
your real mother,
with from the time I was 7. But Barbara, she's grandmother to my kids. She's Grammy to my son and my daughter, and just an amazing grandparent, and has always been in my life, and has always been my mother, and always will be.
How has your father?
What we were saying was she's amazing.
Yeah,
amazing actor.
Amazing.
Actually, in which I found out recently, William Inge's last Broadway play. She starred in that with Beau Bridges, which was directed by Harold Clurman.
Right.
So worked with these legends.
Speaking of legends, your dad, how has this influence of your father influenced you along the way? Having somebody that's a veteran and beloved in the industry by so many people. Tell us about that relationship with your dad, and how that, maybe enhanced some of what you do as well, and influenced it.
Who?
John Smith, remember him?
He set a very high bar. Yeah. He set a very high bar. I feel like his work is so focused and so natural. There's actually, he came out of a tradition, the tradition of improv. He was with Second City, and that tradition was really important to him and very dear to his heart. I did not come out of that tradition, even though that's his. I mentioned earlier that I'm the academic in the family, and I think that has translated into my work as well. I am very text-based. I'm very interested in the text. And I improv might happen for me once I feel that I've become rooted in the text and know and understand the character because I have a thorough understanding of the text, and all of the depths and layers of that text. And then once I'm secure in that, sometimes an improvisational moment may grow out of that. But improvisation is not for me, I think, the starting place that it is for my father. But ultimately, I think all roads lead to Rome. And one of the things that I dislike most in any school of acting or theory of acting is orthodoxy. You know, I tend not to trust actors who say this is the way the work is done, because you do not approach Neil Simon the way you approach Chekhov. And we need to have all of those tools and approaches in our toolbox.
That's so true. That is so true. You know, that leads me to, you're intuitive too. My segue was to talk about Neil Simon and being a part of the Sunshine Boys with Tony Randall and Jack Klugman. Tell us about that experience. How did that all develop, and what was that like, Matthew?
That was extraordinary. It was extraordinary partly because I don't know if you know that, you know, my father directed the original production of the Sunshine Boys in 1973 with Jack Albertson and Sam Levine. Right. And I would hang out at rehearsals and watch them do that in the original production. Lou Stadlin played the nephew in the original Broadway production, and was amazing in it. Then years later, I make my Broadway debut in a Neil Simon play with Lou Stadlin in the production. Then did the national tour of that play with Lou, and then go on to do the first role that I do on Broadway, other than the understudy role that I did one night on Broadway. And the first role that I actually have on Broadway is in the revival of the Sunshine Boys, playing the role that my friend Lou played. You know, so again, the way these things come full circle. And I remember sitting in rehearsal with Tony and Jack, who were just amazing. And they were working on a moment in the play where the two characters are arguing over where a chair goes. And Tony and Jack are trying to work out the bit, and they're moving the chair about 2 feet each time. They're like saying, that's not the doctor's sketch. And then they move the chair 2 feet and they say, that's the doctor's sketch. And the bit wasn't working. And I was sitting there and I was remembering watching the original rehearsals of that scene. And the joke is that at the end of the argument, one of them moves the chair, and it actually says it in the script, maybe an inch. Like they just shifted a little tiny bit. And then they say, that's the doctor's sketch. And there I was sitting, you know, at the age of, I think I was 38 at the time. And I'm like saying, you know what? This is one of those times where you just keep your fat gap shut.
You don't say a word, right?
They'll figure it out. But one night backstage, and this is a funny thing about perspective, and where people are coming from and where they are in their lives. We're backstage at the Lyceum Theater. The show was a hit. Jack is on stage doing the doctor sketch bit before Tony and my entrance into the sketch, or Tony's entrance into the sketch. And then I come on when Jack has the heart attack. But Tony and I are standing there in the wings waiting backstage. And the audience is just screaming with laughter. And Tony turns to me and he looks at me and he says, you really gave up the law to do this? And I looked at him and I said, yeah. He's dead serious.
He's serious. Oh yeah.
He says, why? And I pointed, like, I said, do you hear that?
Yeah.
He said, people didn't laugh when you were practicing law. And I said, maybe judges, maybe some judges.
Right. That's about it. Right.
Like, what are you doing here?
Did he understand after you explained it that way?
Yeah, I think so. But, you know, there's somebody who he had a great love of the theater.
Oh, yeah.
But also somebody who's been in it forever. And there are those nights where it's like, oh, it's time to make the donuts.
Right.
I don't care how much you love the art. There are nights where it's like,
Yeah.
I have to go make the donut.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Not every night is exactly glitz, glamour, and smooth as silk. Yeah.
Champagne riches and caviar dreams.
Right. Now, another exciting thing, an amazing thing in your career is originating the role of Gabe and that Pulitzer Prize winning Dinner with Friends. Tell us about that.
That was one of the great privileges of my life, and a real break for me.
Yeah, yeah.
And I crawled through broken glass to get that part. I had to audition for it 4 times.
Wow.
I was told 3 times that I didn't. I was told 3 times that I didn't get it, and gave up. And then would get another, then I'd get a call saying you have another audition. And the last time was they were starting rehearsal on a Monday. And on Monday. And my last audition was on the Thursday before, and I knew a Friday night came and I didn't hear anything. So I thought, okay, you didn't get it. That Monday night, I'm teaching an acting class. 7 o'clock, my agent calls me and says they want to see you again tomorrow. And I said they were supposed to start rehearsal today. And my agent said, yeah, they didn't. So I showed up at the audition. And my nemesis, there was one other actor there, my nemesis. Actually, an actor, a wonderful actor, and was a friend. But the kind of guy who was a couple of notches up above me and got a lot of the things that I would have thought, God, I would have liked to have been able to do that. But of course, he has more credit. So I showed up and he was there and my heart just sank because I knew I wasn't going to get it. And so now it's my 4th audition and nobody has said anything to me. Usually when you audition again a second time, they say, you know, we liked what you did before, but could you try this? Could you do something a little different? Nothing, not a word. So I walked into my audition and Dan Sullivan was there, an amazing Tony Award-winning director. Donald Margulies, obviously not yet a Pulitzer Prize winner because he won it for Dinner with Friends, but an Obie winner and just somebody whose work I was constantly floored by. And I walked into the room and I looked at them and I said, what do you want? Because I wanted to know what I was doing wrong, you know? And Dan Sullivan just pointed at the stage. He said, just go do what you did before. And I went and did exactly what I'd done the previous 4 auditions because it was the only way I could understand that role. And the next day I was walking up Broadway to a voiceover audition and I got a call saying no, it was that day. It was about 2 hours later. I was walking up Broadway to a voiceover audition and I got a call saying you start work tomorrow. And about 2 weeks into rehearsal, I was suffering from terrible paranoia because all I could think was Dan didn't want me or Donald didn't want. One of them didn't want me. That must have been what the problem was. And I finally said to Lisa Emery, the incredible actor who is playing my wife, and she's on Ozark now, just one of the great American actors, I think. I said to her, I said, God, I'm so paranoid every day at rehearsal because I don't know which one of them didn't want me. And she said, what are you talking about? And I said, and I told her what the audition process was like. And she said, they both wanted you. You wouldn't be here if they didn't both want you. I said, well, what was the problem? She said, the producers didn't want you. The producers wanted a name in the role. and that lifted a great weight off my shoulders, because I don't really care what the producers want. I care what the director and Donald Margulies want. I care what Dan Sullivan and Donald Margulies want.
Exactly.
But I didn't have. I had done the Sunshine Boys, but that was a revival, and it was, I got nice notices in it, but to a large extent, it was the Tony and Jack show. And the other three people in Dinner with Friends had a lot more, much bigger resumes than I did at the time. So it was a real break, and something I will always be grateful for, and will look back on as one of the great experiences of my life.
Absolutely. And again, when you have opportunities like that, and to soak it all in, and just to witness everything that you've witnessed, it really is amazing to be able to look back at that and cherish that. And again, call that up every once in a while as a memory, and then share that with those, again, that you're teaching along the way. You've also had some really cool roles in movies along the way as well. Tell us about the entree into the movie world, film.
Well, my movie work hasn't been, the movie work itself hasn't been anything to write home about. I've had, minor roles, a line. I have a role in Liar Liar.
Yeah.
That family members go see it, knowing that I have a role in it, and afterwards they'll say, "Well, I saw the movie. Where were you?"
Yeah.
or in Death to Smoochie, in which I got to do a scene with Robin Williams, but it's wintertime, and a stuntman had to do half the scene.
Mm-hmm.
So I have like a thing across my face through half the scene, a winter face mask on. So again, another great role where, although I did get kissed on the lips by Robin Williams. Not in the movie, but just because in the movie, he tackles me at the top of the steps of the Museum of Natural History. No,
New York
Museum of the Met.
Oh, the Met, yeah.
Fifth Avenue, and we roll, or the two stuntmen roll all the way down the steps and land on Fifth Avenue. And it was a cold winter day. It was snowing a little bit, and then we had to roll into this shot where we're going to be. He's on top of me, screaming at me. So they're lining up the shot, and we're lying on the sidewalk on Fifth Avenue, and he's lying on top of me, and I'm lying there, and they're getting the lights set up, and we're just lying there, and he's on top of me, and we're waiting, and we're just waiting and waiting and waiting and looking at each other with just nothing going on. And finally I said to him, I'm starting to have feelings for you. And he planted one right on the lips. Big kiss right on the mouth. And it was like, wow.
That's it.
That to keep me warm on those lonely
nights.
That
was you were also in An Unmarried Woman.
Oh my gosh, you're going way back. Yeah.
We did our research.
I was 16 years old, and my first movie makeout scene with Lisa Lucas, and I was 17. I think we were both 17 years old, and the producers did a really nice thing. Or I don't know if it was the producer's idea or if it was Paul Mazursky's idea, the director. They did a great thing where they called me and they said, "Look, we want you take Lisa out on a date, like go to dinner and a movie, or And they gave me money. They paid for it for us to go out on a date. And it was a funny role because we just had that one little tiny scene. I mean, I think I'm on screen for like 30 seconds. Everybody thinks it's a big role in the movie because there is scene after scene where she's on the phone with Phil, her boyfriend. She's talking to him on the phone. The parents are talking about him. Oh, we like Phil, blah, blah, blah. I'm only on screen for, it's the tiniest little role, but it's a much bigger role in people's minds because he's talked about a lot.
Exactly.
I could also say I played Harvey, the Invisible Rabbit, Lefty and Waiting for Lefty, Godot. You know, those are other big roles that are actually very small.
So my question is, which kiss was better, with Lisa or with Robin?
Wow.
You could toss that around. We could always circle back on that.
Definitely with Lisa. It was a big, you know, the Teamsters though. God, the Teamsters, the crew on movies, they were merciless. They were merciless while we were doing that.
That was.
They're like, come on, let's see your technique. Come on, show us. I'm like, guys, you know, Paul Mazursky was like, guys, leave them alone. They're not, you know, they're teenagers.
That is funny.
Yeah.
What room are you in now? Is this like an office in your home?
This is, you know, it's funny. This is my bedroom actually, but this is the office / set for my talk show. This is where I do my my YouTube stuff. It didn't used to look like this in my bedroom, but with the pandemic and having to go to do it, like, I'll bet if we turned the camera around where you are, we'd be surprised at what the rest of that room looked like.
There's a living room couch. There's chairs. There's a whole living room.
But you've built your set,
right? Yeah, did exactly.
And that's what I did here. I moved everything around so that I would have this sort of officey feel.
It's amazing, right? Yeah. It's amazing how you get you use your creative noggin, right?
And right over here, I have a whole nother monitor, so that for when I need to throw pictures up on the you know, like I'm sure you're doing, you probably use 2 monitors, right?
No, actually, all using one
monitor.
Yeah, doing it all.
Yeah, a second monitor helps get those pictures up there if you've got a whole bunch of them.
So television as well. You mentioned Kojak early on, and what a great beginning there with Eli Wallach and, like I said, Telly Savalas and all. But people might also recognize you from some others: NCIS, Law and Order, Bull. Tell us about some of the other television performances you've had an opportunity to be a part of.
I don't think they'll recognize me now that I shaved. Well, you know, it's funny. The one episode that I did that has gotten more response than anything else was an episode of Special Victims Unit.
Yes.
Where the week after it aired, I would be walking down the street in Manhattan and somebody would buttonhole me and say, "You son of a bitch," because my wife had been raped and she got pregnant and I left her. It's that episode. And it's an episode they air a lot, apparently. And my response when people would get angry at me was always the same. I'd say, first of all, it's a television show, and she lied to me. So there's that. But you know, it's funny the times that we're living in. Yeah. Whenever that episode airs, within a few days, I'll get a message from somebody. "Hey, I caught that episode of SVU in which you were such a bastard," you know? Yeah. I think it was the day before yesterday. I'm sitting at my computer. My phone suddenly starts dinging, maybe 5 or 6 times. So obviously right now, everybody in the world is at home watching SVU on USA. It's because amazing. My phone just blew up. Where usually I'll hear from one person when that episode airs.
And the phone's gone from ringing to now dinging. They used to ring.
But you know, so that was, but the Law and Orders were fun, and I did enough of them to get comfortable there.
I got to do an episode they had me as a court reporter because they shoot it over in New York. Right. Yeah. And that was a lot of fun. It was through central casting and all. Yeah. And I guess they, was the look and everything that they wanted. And it was really, really cool. It was really an interesting experience. I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun, great crew, and, all professionals. And that's a series that's just gone on. That whole franchise of Law and Order has gone on
forever.
Years,
Then one thing that was just terrific fun was did a couple of episodes on the second season of Get Shorty.
Yes.
And that show, my older brother was one of the executive producers and was the supervising director of it, and was directing the 2 episodes that I was in. And it was the first time we'd worked together as, gosh, I think it may have been the first time we actually worked together since I was 8 and he was 11. And now he's the director.
Amazing.
And I think we were both a little nervous going into it. Like, what was it going to, I think he was maybe nervous if I would be bridling at my older brother telling me what to do. And I was nervous about, will I be letting my older brother down? And it ended up just being a lovely experience. You know, we ended up feeling like we had a shorthand.
Mm-hmm.
Also, he's been directing for a long time now. I have much more stage experience than I do in film and television. He has series after series after series behind him as an actor, and then directing a ton of television. So I had no problem saying, hey, this is your bailiwick. This. So tell me what to do and make me better.
Right.
And I actually went to him at one point because I was feeling, it was so easy working with him that I got worried that he was just letting me off the hook.
Yeah.
And I went to him and I said, are you getting what you need? He said, what do you mean? I said, well, it's been very easy, and you've been,
is this just brotherly love, or
I want to make sure you're getting what you need. And he said, oh yeah, if I wasn't getting, he said, we would not be moving on until I got what I needed. We're going to get what I need. So that was nice to hear. And then there was one moment in one of the episodes where I did something that I don't think anybody in the world would see or notice, but it was for him.
Mm-hmm.
And when we were watching the episode once together, later when the episode aired and we were watching it, that moment came and he cracked up, and it made me so happy because it was just like a little Easter egg that I put in there just for him. And he got it.
What was it? Do you remember what you did?
I remember exactly what it was. It was a moment where we were in a group therapy session, and Ray Romano is talking about struggles he had with his dad. And the therapist says, well, if your dad, and Adam and I get along great with our dad, but I don't think there's anybody out there who doesn't have, dads are powerful figures, and we as kids we struggle with them, and then particularly if you're going into the same damn career as they're in, and they're an iconic figure like our father is. I think we both that can't help but be some kind of not necessarily a weight, but a bar that you aspire to. So the therapist says to Ray Romano, it says, what would you say to your father right now if he was here? And Ray launches into this monologue about what I would say to him, and it ends with him saying, and I would say, Dad, I love you, but I can't spend my life trying to please you anymore, or something like that. It was along the lines of that. And when Ray said that, I wasn't looking at him. I was sort of looking down at the floor, just sitting next to him, listening. I'm in the group therapy session. And he says, I love you, but I can't worry about pleasing you anymore. And I just went, and that was in there just for Adam, because I know we've both gone through that thing of like, how do you go into the same career that your father went into when he's somebody like our father, and still say, yeah, but I have to figure out how to do this. I love you and I respect his work. Mm-hmm. I still have to figure out how to do it my way.
Right. Exactly.
I value every bit of advice my father's ever given me about craft. But no matter how much he tells me, you still have to figure it out yourself.
Which is exactly right. And he gave you the slack and rope and room to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we got to work together once on a film. I mean, we've worked together several times, but we worked together in a film where we had a lot to do together once, an independent feature called Raising Flag. And I am so extraordinarily grateful that that experience came after Dinner with Friends, where I felt like I was able to meet my dad on set and bring it, because he wants somebody who's coming to play.
Right.
You know? Right. And if I had come all meek and mild, then it wouldn't have been fun for him. Similarly to, I remember a moment with Jack Klugman where we were in rehearsal, and we're getting to the scene where it was right before Tony Randall's first entrance, and Jack's character is very nervous about seeing him for the first time, and I went up to Jack and I started straightening his tie for him. Before Tony's entrance, I started straightening his tie, and Jack slapped my hand. It's like, get, and slapped my hand away. And when we were done, I walked up to him. This was early in the rehearsal process. I walked up to him. I said, Jack, I'm so sorry. You know, I should not have, you know, touched you or messed with your tie without talking to you about it beforehand. And he looked at me. He said, I was acting, for Christ's sake. Oh, he wants me to come and bring it. You know, he doesn't want me to be deferential on stage.
Right.
You got to do what the character would do.
Exactly. And you got that early, which was fantastic from Jack.
I'm acting, for Christ's sake.
Here's two faces in your life that folks will recognize here.
Oh, geez. That's my older brother Adam on the left, and me on the right.
Right.
With my new haircut.
Yeah.
Yep.
Your brother, a fabulous actor, and then of course, Dad, the incomparable Alan Arkin, right there. Acting is in the genes in your family, that's for sure. We talked about Dinner with Friends. I'm going to pull up this shot here.
I have a nickname for that shot. It's a little off color. I don't know if I can say it on air. Can I say something a little off color?
Give it a shot.
I call that photograph, "That's Not My Foot." But it actually is my foot. But I've just always thought that the angle that photograph was taken at is a little inappropriate.
Now you have people wondering if he's telling the truth or not.
No, that's my foot.
Here's another. So what was that, for people that might have not have seen it? What was happening there? What was that scene about?
That's the last scene in the play. Lisa, God, I can't look at that picture without just remembering that scene in that moment.
Yeah.
Lisa, this scene is sort of the heart of the play, where she is confessing this dream that she's had. She's worried about us in the wake of the divorce of our best friends, and she's had this dream, and she tells me this incredibly complicated dream that she's struggling with, and my response is I say, huh, and go back to my book. and she loses it on me. It's like, that's what you have to say? I tell you this dream, this terrifying dream, and you have nothing to say? And Gabe, who has been very silent through the whole play, finally has to speak to her. It's a tough moment.
It reminds me,
beautiful play.
Oh yeah. It's funny because it makes me think of sometimes when I leave voicemails or I email or I text, mine tend to be very lengthy and long, because I do it as if it's not just factual, but I do it as if I'm actually talking to you. When I leave the voicemail, when I write the email, or when I text, it's as if we're having the conversation, and I'm trying to give you as much information as fact as possible. And sometimes, it could be a little mini Gettysburg Address, and the response will be K.
Yeah.
As an okay, and
Right.
I'll be like, you mean I couldn't even get the O with the K to get
Not
the
even,
okay? Just K.
Yeah, my daughter gives me that K.
Okay.
I get a text back K.
That's it.
Yeah. Do you have of the photographs? Did I send you?
Here's another dinner with friends too. There's this.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's another one there. We do have Guys and Dolls.
Guys and Dolls.
Tell us about that.
1999. Same year as Dinner with Friends, actually. The Fifth Avenue Theater in Seattle, with Gregory Harrison playing Sky Masterson. Gregory, who's a good friend of mine and was a guest on my show yesterday, actually. I tortured him during this production. Tortured him. Yeah, that's the only musical I performed in. I've done a lot of workshops of musicals, but that was the only time I've ever done one.
Did you like it?
Incredible. Doug Carfrae and Kevin Ligon.
Doug
Carfrae on my left, Kevin Ligon on my right. Wonderful, wonderful musical theater guys. I had a ball. Oh my! You have my OkCupid dating picture. That's what I use on my dating profile.
That's what you do in the dating. And does anything, you get any response or?
Not a lot. It's not working for me. I actually posted this because all my classes from the university had to move online, and this character is an online. He teaches online, and there's another photograph where he's sitting at his computer with a microphone talking into the computer, and I posted that on my Facebook page a few weeks ago, saying the transition to online teaching during the lockdown is going very well.
That's right. Well, you got to be 6 feet away from people and 10 feet away from the refrigerator.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is The Whale. Tell us about this.
This is a play by the amazing Samuel D. Hunter, who won a MacArthur Fellowship a few months after this play, and this was the production. There had been a couple of productions of it. This wasn't the world premiere, but it was the West Coast premiere at South Coast Repertory down in Orange County. And it's an incredibly moving play about a 600-pound man who is trying to salvage his relationship with his very angry teenage daughter before he dies.
Yeah. And
when they asked me to do it, they sent me the script, and I read it, and I said, I called the casting director, who's a friend of mine, and I said, when are the auditions? And she said, it's not an audition. We want to know if you want to do this. And I said, who's directing it? And it was Martin Benson, who's one of the artistic directors down there. And I said, well, I have to ask both you and Martin a question before I say yes. And they said, what? I said, do you guys know that I can do this? Because I don't know that I can do it. I want to, but I may need, this is going to be rough. And I'll need you guys like really behind me. And they said, no, you can do it. And one thing we all agreed on is that the New York production, which I didn't see and I heard was spectacular. I hear that the fella who originated the role in New York was just incredible. But if you look at the photographs from that, they had the suit, but they didn't do makeup on the rest of him. And we all felt very strongly that it needed to be a completely believable transformation. So we started working on it months before the production.
I mean, it's incredible, the transformation. I want to go back to that photo. It's so realistic.
They hired the amazing,
what was that like?
well, they hired the amazing Kevin Haney, who's a prosthetics fellow who does a lot of prosthetics for the Marvel movies and horror movies and stuff. And they did a full head, you know, a pour of all the way down to here, you know. So that piece runs from under my eye. The nose that you're seeing is my nose, and my mouth is in the clear. But what you're seeing wraps completely around from here all the way up to under my eyes and around my ears and to the back of my head. And then the suit weighed about 30 pounds. And there's actually an amazing video. I don't know, you might want to link to it in the description. There's a video on YouTube where we set up. Oh, that's another great picture from the show.
Look at that. That's incredible.
Jennifer Christopher, another wonderful, wonderful actor. She's terrific in this show. But we set up a camera in the makeup costume room and shot the entire process of makeup and costume, and then sped it up to, I think the video is about 8 minutes long. So you start out with me as me. I mean, the only thing that's not makeup is that mustache goatee.
Yeah.
And obviously letting my hair get really horrible. And so then in 8 minutes, you see every step of the process. And the costume they worked on for months, which had layers to it of the foam under part of it, but then over the foam, they sewed pouches that they filled with micro beads so that as I moved, it would sway. And then I had a friend who didn't weigh quite that much, but had weighed almost that much, who spent a lot of time talking with me about what it was like, what the both the physical experience, you know, giving me tips about movement, but also the internal psychology of being trapped in that. And
yeah, I mean, what was that like? Was it it must have been, you know, 200 degrees. Was it sort of claustrophobic at all, or
it was, and it was, I had to wear a special vest that had ice packs in it on the underneath that in order to not just overheat too much. The first time we before we'd figured that out, the first time we tried to do a run through in the full costume, we got to about 10 minutes from the end of the play, and somebody said a line to me, and I turned to them and I looked at them and I just went blank. And it wasn't that I couldn't remember my lines, it's just I couldn't, just suddenly nothing was. And everybody rushed to me because apparently the color in my color just, you know, they said the blood just started draining, and they got me out of the costume and got some orange juice into me. And what I realized is I'd been trying to eat really healthy, like salads and vegetables, you know, like, you know, and then somebody came and told me, they said, no, you have to carb up before doing the show because you were running out of. So I actually had a huge big gulp, one of those disgusting 7-Eleven cups filled with Gatorade on stage with me, because I'd have to keep myself cooled down and powered to get through the show wearing that outfit.
And how many performances did you have to wear that?
8 shows a week for 4 weeks.
Wow. Wow.
And it was about an hour and a half process getting into it.
And how about getting out of it each night?
About 40 minutes getting out. Half an hour to 40 minutes.
That's incredible, huh?
Yeah.
I mean, have you, have you done anything similar to that, where you've had to get into a costume that was just a total transformation? Can you imagine? Remember Bill Bixby when he was the Incredible Hulk in that series?
Yeah. No, never. Never anything. Never anything transformative like that before or since.
Do you have a preference, comedy over drama? Is there anything that you lean to you think naturally reflects the essence of who you are, Matthew? I mean, you're very comedic, very quick-witted, fast, dry.
You know, it's funny. I've done so much comedy on stage.
Yeah, yeah.
And if you look at my IMDb page, not a comedy there. I mean, some of the, like, you know, Death to Smoochie or something, but I've never done half-hour sitcom. That I've done much more serious drama on television. I tend to play a lot of doctors, lawyers, or the guy who's not necessarily the bad guy, but the guy who kind of ends up going to jail because he screwed up, the sad sack. But I think there's something about this face that casting directors and producers look at and they say, oh yeah, that's the guy who gives you bad news. Because I've told so many people, I'm sorry, but we did everything we could.
We could, yeah.
We had him on the table for, you know, for hours, but there was just too much damage.
It was too much. We tried. We gave it our all.
I told Kathy Baker that she was dying in Medium. I told, you know, in Veronica Mars, I told her that her father was in a bad car accident. And in Third Watch, I said, I don't know if your partner's going to make it. I mean, just over and over again, I'm giving people not very good news. Something about this face.
So let's talk about your experience, you know, repertory and so much more, the college experience teaching. You're as an adjunct professor and so much more. When did you start incorporating that? Oh, look, that's funny. Merlin in Canada says your ability to be able to, you know, comfort people and tell them you saw that, right?
Yeah.
That's the lawyer in you.
That's it. Yeah. I got bad news for you.
I got bad news.
You're going away.
You're going away.
I did everything I could. You're going to jail.
You're still going away. The desire to want to then inspire others, and you're teaching as an adjunct professor and repertory theater and so much more. Tell us about when that started coming into play for you, Matthew.
Well, it's funny. You know, I had taught. I've been asked to, you know, when you're an actor and you're working, people say, hey, will you come talk to my class? Will you come talk to this high school or something? And I'd done that, but I always enjoyed it. But I never thought of myself as a teacher.
Right.
And then one day about, God, I guess it was like in 2008, a friend of mine was studying at HB Studio in New York with Austin Pendleton, who's another person I studied with there, who's an amazing actor and teacher.
Just a guest a couple of nights ago. He was here on the show.
Yeah. That's funny. I was working with him just a couple of days ago on a reading. He was working on a reading of a play that my mother wrote. That's so funny.
Small world, huh?
Amazing, amazing teacher, amazing man. So this friend of mine was in Austin's class and we were meeting for lunch. So I went down to HB and I'm sitting in the lobby waiting for my friend, waiting for class to get out. And I wanted to say hi to Austin. And sitting there and with my book, and the director of the school walks through the lobby and he stops and he sees me sitting in the lobby and he does a double take and he says, well, what are you doing here? And I said, I'm waiting for a friend of mine. He said, oh, do you want to teach?
Simple as that.
And I was like, I haven't really.
Humana.
I haven't really thought about it. What do you want me to teach? He said, what do you want to teach? And I said, well, let me think about it for a while. So I went back to him about a week later, and I said, I think I would like to teach just a scene study class. And I said, and I would also like to teach a class, and I don't know if people will sign up for this, but I'd like to teach a class that is just Uda's exercises, period. Nothing else. And they said, well, we'll put it on the schedule and see if people sign up. More people always signed up for just the straight Uda Hagen exercises class than for the scene study class. I mean, they both had people in them, but there were people who really wanted to learn those exercises. And so I taught there for a few years. And then when I came out to LA, I started teaching privately out here. And it's very hard to get people out in LA interested in just studying Uda Hagen's exercises, because everybody wants to just learn how to get an agent and be a TV star. Very few people want to take the time to really dig in and learn the craft before.
So what's your secret? How are you able to attract them to that?
I'll let you know when I figure it out. I try to, what I do, what happens now is I bring them into an on-camera class that I teach, and after I've beaten them up for a while, they realize they better go learn how to act, not just how to do a scene for the camera. You know, I think a lot of people go into acting originally not knowing that there's the amount of work involved in it that is really necessary. But then, you know, almost every teaching job that I've had, I have fallen into. The job down at South Coast Rep, I asked them out of curiosity. I said, you know, I said, I taught back in New York. Do you guys need any teachers here in the conservatory? And they said, no, we're full up. We have people who've been teaching for us for years, so we don't need anybody. I was like, okay. And then 2 weeks later, one of them got a professorship at a college and left. And they came back to me and they said, remember when you said you might like to teach here? And I said, yeah. They said, you want to teach here? And I said, sure. So I started teaching there. And then the woman who ran the summer program was leaving, and they asked me to take that over. And then at a barbecue 5 years ago, I met somebody, the husband of one of the people who teaches with me at the conservatory at South Coast Rep, and he's a professor at Chapman University in the film school. And we were just chatting at the barbecue, getting to know each other. And a week later, I get an email from him saying, you want to teach a class at the film school? And I said, you know, I'm not a filmmaker, I'm just an actor. And he said, you know this stuff. And so they hired me, and I've been there I'm starting my fifth year in September.
That's fantastic. And you're really enjoying it?
Oh my God. It's the students are so great there, and it's opened up a whole new world for me, because the two classes I'm teaching a class called Introduction to Visual Storytelling, and then I teach a production class. And what I've been learning as I teach those classes has, I had a real tunnel vision the way I watched movies. I watched them only as an actor, really. Unlike everybody else in my family who, you know, watches them as actors, as directors, as, you know, my younger brother, Tony, is an editor and into cinematography, and he knows everything there is to know about film. And I've started, you know, my education in that late, but I'm keeping well ahead of my students. Thank God.
And how has it changed? I mean, you've been doing this for a long time. How has the profession changed? And like you said, you alluded a little bit to the fact that, and a couple of folks I was chatting with a couple of nights ago, talking about those who are going into the music industry. We're living in this super celebrity-driven culture right now. And I don't know if maybe this reset, the situation we're going through now globally, might reset some of that, maybe in a good way, where we're not so buzz and bling oriented. But But this mentality of wanting to be that overnight sensation, and all of the competition shows, you got to go on this show and be loved by America, and they press yes, or they press no, and that decides your career and your love and success and riches and all those things. Sort of this quick overnight instant gratification way, impatient way of doing things, when you used to hone crafts like yours and mine and work hard and connect and grow. How has that changed? Do you see it being that way, where everybody wants to become, a hit immediately?
Yeah. I mean, I have people who come into acting class who haven't done anything. They haven't even really done anything other than maybe one high school production. And the first question they're asking me is, how do I get an agent?
Mm.
And, I'm trying to explain to them, or how do I get an audition? I say, you get one shot at a casting director. You go to a casting director's office and you're horrible, they don't see you again.
That's it.
And I wrote an article once on this idea, and that is that, I teach people in writing. I teach writing and I teach acting. And I think those are the two arts that people just think they can do. Nobody goes to see the Paul Taylor Dance Company and walks out and says, I want to do that, and I'm going to choreograph something and invite all my friends to see it in 2 months. Nobody goes and looks at the Mona Lisa and says, I can do that.
Paint that in a week.
Yeah. Michelangelo and says, I'm going to do that and have an exhibition in 3 months. But people watch, we have these computers, right? And I can write something and it looks like a book. Mm-hmm. So they think that they can, and I get these manuscripts to evaluate where I realize this person wrote it from beginning to end, and they typed the end, and now they're saying, here, read it. And I say, did you read it through? Did you edit it yourself before you're handing it to somebody? And the same thing with acting. I think people look and they say, that guy on that show look at Mark Harmon on NCIS, right? We were talking about NCIS. I think he's fantastic on that show. Mm-hmm. But if you don't have any knowledge of acting, he's doing very little. He's standing there and he's saying some lines. That's a lot of what we do. And I think people look at them and they say, I can do that.
Simple as that, right?
It's what I do all day long. I talk and have a cup of coffee. Yeah? Mm. Do you sip the coffee at the right time? Do you put it down in the right place? Do you and then the minute they get on camera, it's suddenly, instead of sitting on camera and saying, instead of saying, hey, Jim, how you doing today? They're going, hey, Jim, how you doing today? The camera's on and they freak out.
Overacting.
Freak out in front of the camera. And these people do this, and then suddenly I hear all the time, boy, this is harder than I thought it would be. Mm-hmm. It's like, yeah, it is. That's why.
Because well-trained, no matter what it is, well-trained, fine-tuned professionals. I was just having this conversation, I forgot who it was, just a couple of nights ago. It's really cool. And it was in this direction, in this vein. The key to everything that we all do is to make it look so effortless and easy. And because we make things look so effortless and easy, everybody thinks that they can just flip a switch and just do it. Now, there are people who can. It's just naturally born, and maybe they tapped into something and they can do that. But a lot of people, because we make things look so fun and easy and effortless, the assumption is, oh my God, it's all glamour and glitz and it's fun and it's effortless and it's parties all the time and it's all this. Meanwhile, behind the curtain, behind the wall, behind the set, there's wires and dumpsters and this and that and craziness to make it all look so easy, right?
It's funny. You asked a question earlier that I want to circle back to. You were asking about Uta Hagen, and it relates to this, that idea of making it look easy, and what her exercises were about. And she has this one exercise called endowments, about endowments, and which has to do with, you know, making something that's not hot look hot. So on stage, if you pour me a hot cup of coffee, of course you're just pouring cold water into that cup, right, and handing it to me. And I tell my students all the time that so much of acting, when you do it right, you'll be doing really great work. Nobody is going to notice.
That's right.
You know, so you pour that cup of coffee and you hand it to me, and you hold it in your hand for a minute, and then you hand it to me, and I go like this, and I'm holding it, and suddenly the illusion is shattered, and everybody in the audience is saying, knows it's wrong, because that cup would be burning my hand, right? But if you hand me that cup, and I reach forward and I take it from you like this, and I right? Nobody's going to notice that, because all they're going to see is me taking a hot cup from you and putting it down, and nobody's going to know that that's acting work. And the time that takes to think about that kind of attention to the reality of the circumstance that has to infuse every single aspect and moment of a scene. I mentioned earlier that last audition that I had for Dinner with Friends, where there was this actor that I respected tremendously, and then I felt like, now I'm not going to get the job. And he was called in for his audition first, and I was out in the lobby waiting. And I'm waiting for my chance to go in. And I don't know how well you know the play, but the scene they were having us audition with was the scene in the bar where Gabe finally confesses to his friend how he feels about his wife, you know, that I can't understand how you got, you know, that I cherish my wife.
Right.
And imagine a world without her. And I'm sitting out in the lobby waiting, and I suddenly hear screaming from inside the theater. And he's screaming these lines. And I'm out there in the lobby thinking, boy, that's not how I do it. I did it very quietly, and you know, and leaning in and almost buttonholing him as I told him how I feel.
Right.
Partly because we are only two actors on stage, but the conceit is we're in a crowded bar at happy hour.
Right. Yeah. So it's supposed, right. Exactly.
Right. That's the circumstance that we're in. We're in a midtown New York. You know, we've all been in those businessmen bars at 5 o'clock, you know. And so that was when I walked into the room and I said to them, what do you want? That's partly why I asked, because I had just heard this radically different interpretation of the scene. And I was informing mine with, where are, you know, the environment where, and I'm telling my students all the time, you know, they do a scene and I'll stop them and I'll say, where are you in the world? You're on a park bench, or you're screaming, but you're right next to this person, or you're doing a scene where they'll be doing an on-camera scene and the conceit is that the person they're talking to left and went into the other room, and the person keeps doing the scene and they don't raise their voice. I'm saying they're in the other room now. You've got to be aware of that. The audience, again, isn't going to know when you do it right, because they're just going to see reality in front of them, what passes for reality. They will know instantly when you do it wrong.
That's really amazing too, because that's so true. They don't notice sometimes those little details, and but they're very, very important, because it's all,
they're not meant to be noticed.
Right. It's just part of the Absolutely.
If you've got to make it look like it's cold outside, if it's snowing, you better make it look like you're cold. And they're not going to notice that because they're seeing the snow. So of course you're cold. But if it's snowing outside and you're in a t-shirt and you don't shiver, they'll know you're full of crap.
You probably appreciate this. You see it sometimes. I've seen it in movies. I've seen it on TV shows. I've seen it on stage too, but I've seen it in like soap operas and everything, where supposedly they are out in the cold, but the only part that they forgot is that cold steam that comes out of your mouth, and they're talking, and that's not happening. So you're kind of like, I think they're probably in a 75-degree studio somewhere. They're not out in the field. I've actually seen that in a couple of actually recent cable TV movies and things.
And there's no excuse for that now because they can fix it in post.
That's the new thing, right? Fix it in post.
Absolutely. There are plugins that will just
to create that effect. Exactly. A lot of people
I mean, the days of squibs and packs are pretty much gone. I got shot on Criminal Minds last year, and I was so excited. I'd never been shot before. I'd watched my dad get shot once, and the plate and the squib and the blood pack and the wires and the battery and the bang, I was so excited. And they're like, "Oh no, sorry, we don't do that anymore." I'm like, "What do you mean you don't do that anymore?" They said, "No, we do it in post." And even the gun, it was an airsoft that doesn't make a sound. This girl, I've never felt so stupid in my life. This young woman, the actress who shoots me, she's got to pull out this thing, and it goes click, and there's no bang,
it's just click.
And fall down and die. I felt like I'm 5 years old in the backyard playing cops and robbers. I felt like an idiot. And they put a spark on the end of the gun in post, right? Takes them 2 seconds to put a on there, and
that's unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah. And then they even have these amazing, when you see somebody like lying in the pool of blood, and you think, "Oh my God, what a mess" when they get up. Do you know what those pools of blood are now? A lot of the time,
it's not ketchup anymore or spaghetti sauce.
It's like a not latex, but it's like a sheet of. They have them in all different sizes and shapes, and it has to be completely clean, Windexed off, and it's laid down on the floor, and you lie on top of it, and it looks like liquid that's spilled. Or like that you'd get at a joke, like the fake vomit you get at a joke shop.
Right.
All of those things now.
That's amazing. People don't realize that. I know through photography, with magazines and commercials and ads, they used to, I don't know if they still do it now. There's a couple of, I've done commercials too. So I was on a couple of sets where I saw them do it for the ice cubes and like a cool drink of iced tea with like, instead of it being ice, because we'd be on set for hours. Right. They're like clear plastic, squares or glass squares. And then the milk that you would see on the Wheaties box or whatever is like Elmer's glue or something. It's like white glue. It's not milk because the milk would have been curdled hours ago because you're on set for 10 hours getting that perfect shot. Right. Little tricks of the trade.
And if it's something that you actually have to drink, those fake ice cubes, the good ones, are apparently really expensive.
I was on
ones that look really good.
Yeah, I was on a set. This was in New York, and it was for I think it was a regional commercial. And we had this actress that was on, and she, she's been doing it for a while, so she knows her craft. But I guess she thought it was making it more realistic, and they didn't mention anything about do it in post. So it was a situation. It was I think it was for a pharmaceutical company, and she was the one who had to take whatever that pill was. So they wanted, of course, to do it and get the shot again and get it again and get it again and move her over here, get that shot, get that angle, all the different angles, different shots. And every single time she would take another pill of whatever the thing was. I don't know, it was aspirin or something, and just keep actually swallowing it, as opposed to not doing it and faking it and cupping it or what have you. She was, and everybody was like, what are you doing? They're like, oh no, you're supposed to, they want me to swallow the pill. No, that was just like the first time, maybe not the other 19 times.
Wow.
How many pills did you take? Oh, I thought it was going to make it more realistic if I really did it. And they're like, oh my God, you want to sit down? Do you need a glass of water? You're going to call an ambulance? She thought it was going the extra mile, but actually taking in the product.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard a friend of mine do the same thing, but it was a Viagra commercial, and he's still having a hard time. Sorry, I couldn't help myself.
You turn it red.
Yeah.
It's a good color. He was out in the sun today. Yeah. So are you doing that? Are you getting out? I know there on the West Coast, things are, a little tough right now. We're doing okay here in the Northeast, but
I go for a
walking
walk every day. I'm an avid cyclist.
Me too.
I am not cycling now because I have a couple of risk factors that are no problem in my normal life. I'm perfectly healthy. But I have a couple of risk factors that I've been told. I have some scarring in my lungs from a very bad bout of pneumonia. The last pandemic, the H1N1 10 years ago, which I got H1N1 and got pneumonia. And so I don't get out on my bike because my feeling is that if I were to, dislocate a shoulder, this is really not the time I want to end up in the emergency room. Or
you don't want to be near a hospital at all, right?
I have two kids that I want to be around for a long time. Two amazing kids. And
tell us about them. Are they pursuing this arena as well?
My son is interested in writing, and he's a phenomenal writer. He just graduated from college. In the midst of this, my heart breaks for him. And my daughter, he's 22. My daughter is 16, and she's a dancer. She's studying dance at LaGuardia High School in New York. Their dance program. But of course, they're in the midst of this horror as well. But she's excuse me. They're both incredibly talented.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. So. When you look at all of this work, Matthew, you have sort of like, maybe like a bucket list? Are there things you still haven't done yet that, gee, I really would like to take a crack at that? Or, gee, I've always wanted to do that. Or that was an opportunity that came and went fast. I wasn't ready for that, but now I'd love to do it. Anything that comes to mind for you?
I've always wanted to direct. No, I mean, I just had to say that because that's
you all say that. Yeah.
I'm flying. Yeah. Again, I was set to direct something, and then we were about to shoot. We were going to be shooting in May, a short film. And again, something that I didn't pursue. So many of the things that have come my way because somebody said, we'd like you to do this rather than me pursuing it. Somebody asked me to direct a short film, and I loved the project, and have access to an amazing crew and equipment through the university, which will support professors in their projects. And that's still on the boards when we can get back to some kind of production safely. I still would like, I still would like to do a TV series and be a series regular. I had a recurring role for 2 years on a series called 100 Center Street. But I would like to do that. People say to me, and I'd like to do an hour-long dramatic, and people say, are you crazy? It's the hardest life and schedule in show business. You have no life. You're working all the time. I like it. I like the work. I like the rhythm of that life. And I had a funny thing happen a couple of years ago. I got a, you know, a lot of these television roles, they're in and of themselves not that interesting, but the money's, you know, you'll get paid more for 2 days on a TV series than doing a play for 8 weeks somewhere, and you'll get a year of health insurance out of it. So I had this not very good role on a not very good TV series, and I was sitting in my trailer waiting to be called to set. And I'd been sitting there for about 3 hours, and I was happy.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought to myself, God, why are you so happy right now? This is kind of a crappy part, and the show's no good, and you're happy as a clam.
Mm.
And I thought, well, you're happy because you're working. And then I realized, yeah, but when I go visit Adam on set, or I go visit my dad on set, I'm happy then, and I'm not in those shows, but I have that same kind of happiness. And I realized the reason I felt so happy was because I felt like I was home. And the thought that occurred to me was there was so much divorce and craziness in my life growing up. I mean, my family is great, and we're in a really good place, and we all love each other, but it was a long road to get there. And there was a lot of turmoil when I was younger. But the set of a TV show or a movie, I realize it's sort of the closest thing I have to the old neighborhood. You know, if you grew up in one town your whole life, and then you could go back there for an afternoon, and you'd be like, oh, I know where the drugstore is. I know where the cafeteria is. I know where the school is. And that's how I feel when I'm on set, whether I'm working or whether I'm visiting a family member or a friend who's working. I feel like I'm back in the old neighborhood. And it's a very comfortable, easy place for me to be.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd love to have one, you know, and there's times where I say to people, I don't care if it's a crappy show.
But look, we have some suggestions, and since you cut the hair, Linda wants to bring back Kojak, so maybe you could be the new Kojak.
Be the new Kojak,
or Streets of San Francisco.
I would be. I'll do it. You know, my agent, who's my new agent, I signed with this woman who I just adore, about 2 years ago. And when she took me on, she said, are there things, you know, I think she was worried, you know, she didn't say it this way, but what she was asking was, are you on a high horse? You know, she was like, are there things you're going to say no to? And I was like, no, there's not much I'm going to say no to. I like to work. I come from the Michael Caine school of, you know, you get work, you do it. And I'm never going to be the kind of star, and don't want to be the kind of star that has to think like, oh, does that fit? Does that fit my brand? Does that fit my image? The brand that I want to have is, hey, that's a guy who will do what he needs to do this part, and do it well.
Which is why you're so good at it, because you're doing it for authentic reasons. You're doing it organically. And I think people really get that. They understand that. They appreciate that. And actually, what you just said is quite refreshing, because a lot of people aren't doing things for those particular reasons. They're doing it sort of in reverse. They want the other stuff first, and then everything comes the other way. You're doing it for the right reasons, and I think that's really cool. And it's just you know, it seems like even with all of this exposure you've had in your life, to all of these things, you still carved out and you stood true to yourself and stand true to yourself, and you've carved out this path of who Matthew is. Sure, with all these little extra things that happen and all the notoriety and the little things that come along with it, but you still said, I'm going to stay and be Matthew and do things that please me and please people I care about, you know, as well as the audience, but it's got to be true to my heart. And I think that's a valuable lesson to anybody that does anything in life that they may really love, is to stick with it, and the resilience that and the tenacity that you develop. You get some armor and blood, sweat, and tears, and you get the rejection, all the things that happen, but you still stay authentic and true to you. Because as time goes on, when you look back at it all, you'll be able to say, you know what, I did it, well, like Sinatra said, my way, but I did it. I was filled as I was doing it.
Yeah.
And that matters. That's important, right?
It really matters, and the relationships I've been able to build along the way with it. I've mentioned South Coast Rep, and that place has really become a family to me. The kind of work that they do there, the people who work there, the relationships I've been able to forge with people at that theater, has really kept me alive inside. So tremendously, I've been really, really fortunate in the kind of work I've gotten to do. Really fortunate.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Was anything you would recommend to somebody that's like watching this live now or in the archives, and they're considering pursuing this type of work, other than follow what Matthew's doing?
Study and read. And watch good movies. Watch old movies. Watch some old movies.
Yeah.
Watch Sullivan's Travels.
Right. Watch the good stuff. Right. Yeah. And people actually right now, through everything we've been going through, have been really craving a lot of nostalgia. They've been watching, like I tell everybody every night, I've been watching a lot of the Dick Van Dyke Show and a lot of the nostalgic stuff. Just because it makes you feel good, and you see the quality that went into so many things from the past, whether it's movies, television, whatever it is, right?
Yeah. And there's some great stuff on now with Netflix and Hulu and Amazon Prime and all these different platforms. There's so much, there's some garbage out there. There is so much really good stuff out there now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A lot of people saying some great things, such a rich discussion, and love it. And it's nice that you feel like home, no matter where that set is or anywhere that feels comfortable. We all sort of need that place. And that's really important. I mean, we really, really do. Somebody asked if did you do any musicals? Of course,
I've done just one. I've done a lot of workshops of musicals. I've only performed professionally in one musical, which was the production of Guys and Dolls in Seattle.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. There's a photo here I wanted to dig up too. We've got the photos. Actually, this was cool. And I think this is the one that's Walk of Fame. Yeah. Tell us about this one here.
We call this picture in my family, we call this two guys with exactly the same expression.
You and your father, right? Alan. Yeah.
But this was last summer, I believe. I think it was last summer. He got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and Steve Carell and I were the speakers at the event. I think it's I don't think I will follow Steve Carell again in my career. But it was a beautiful day, and I think it's an honor that he richly deserved. And I was privileged to be able to speak on behalf of my two brothers at the event, because Adam was in Canada shooting Get Shorty. Well, as I said on the day, I said I'm very happy to be representing my brothers who couldn't be here today, because Adam's in Canada shooting Get Shorty. Tony is performing. I think he was at the Cherry Lane Theater in New York. And I said, I'm playing Optimus. I'm signing autographs as Optimus Prime across the street at Grauman's Chinese, so it was easy for me to get here.
Just go across the street and you're there.
I just had to change out of my outfit.
Didn't need an Uber ride or anything. Well, Matthew, tell us, do you have a website, places, or if people want to learn more about some of the cool stuff?
I do. I have a website, MatthewArkinStudio.com.
Great.
And if you go to Matthew Arkin Studio on YouTube, you'll see my shows, which do not compete with Jim's shows. They're very different than his shows, but I think they're a lot of fun. I do one called Tips and Techniques for Actors, Authors, and Storytellers. I do another show with my brother Anthony called Two Brothers Talk About Food and Movies.
That's right.
Tomorrow night we'll be talking about Last Man Standing. And should I plug my book?
Well, yes, absolutely. Look at the graphic. It says author.
Oh yeah, I have a mystery novel called In the Country of the Blind, which is available on In the Country of the Blind. It's available on Amazon.
What's that book about? Give a little teaser for it.
My mother, the actress, is also a wonderful author, and she always said, as I was growing up, write what you know. So the main character is a detective who, strangely enough, was an attorney who was not happy being an attorney. So he quit practicing law. The difference between him and me is that he didn't know what he wanted to go to. So at the beginning of this novel, he's sort of lost in his life. And gets embroiled in something that gives him his new calling, which is solving crimes. So that's that story. And if you go to my website, you can sign up for my newsletter where I send out articles on acting and writing and storytelling, and also any updates on live streams and other things that I'm up to.
Fantastic. Well, I hope when I'm out there, because sometimes some of my television work takes me out to the West Coast. We have family out there.
Please
get together and break some bread.
Absolutely, please.
I would
I'm
love
going to get in touch with you and have you as a guest on my show.
I'd love that.
And you can talk about, because I think it'll be really good for people to hear about, how we need to take this moment in time and look at, what is my skill set? What is my personality? What do I have to offer? And how can I turn that into valuable content, which you've obviously done with this show. I couldn't do a show like this. You clearly have the skill set and the knowledge and the talent to do this kind of show very effectively. And I think everybody needs to sort of look in and say, where is my niche?
Exactly.
I think you'd be a really effective guest to talk about that.
I would love that. I'd love that. Let's make that happen for sure.
Always fun to sit here with Mr. Lovety.
Mr. Lovety. And with, of course, George Burns.
It's George.
You got to have the George, right? Got to have your cast of characters. Matthew,
one more very quick story.
Sure, absolutely, yeah.
My dad, working with George Burns, noticed as the day was going on that George Burns had several martinis and many, many cigars. And my dad asked him, "Do you do this every day?" And George Burns said, "Yes." And my dad said, what does your doctor say about that? And George said, "My doctor's dead."
That's George.
Yep.
Well, I told you, I always put a glass down, and this was full, and look, there's nothing hardly left.
You are 3 sheets to the wind, my friend.
That's George. He dips that into that cigar is like a straw. It just
that was him.
That's always George. Yeah, it's always George. But this was awesome, and I certainly hope, Matthew, you enjoyed the time with me as much as I have with you.
This was great. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
It was a pleasure. You be well. You stay well. You and the family, and we'll stay connected. Look forward to coming on to your show, and when I come out that way, we'll get connected. I look forward to it.
I'll be in touch to schedule you.
You got it. I appreciate it. Have your people call my people or something, right?
I am my people.
I was just about to say that we are our people. Now I'll press a button here. Right?
All right.
Exactly. You take care.